Hi, this is Jeff White with Versatile Fighting Arts and Life and Living Now. In our talk today, I wanted just to bring up the idea of a personal philosophy. And I find having a personal philosophy that you are aware of and that you agree with is vitally important. It helps with your decision making, it helps with navigating life's challenges, and just it's how you process the world. So your personal philosophy is your collection of your thoughts and your beliefs and your values and your principles that will guide your actions and your decisions. It is how you see the world, how you process the world. If part of your personal philosophy is the world is a dangerous place, then that's going to affect how you act and react to things and to people and situations. If you believe the world is wonderful and everybody's good, you're going to have a different worldview. If you have obviously a more balanced view, because I do think yes, there is a lot of wonderful things in our experience, and there's a lot of beauty in the world. Obviously, there's also a lot of tragedy as well. And so we want to be able to have a personal philosophy that encompasses and incorporates all of that, and one that you feel comfortable with. And it's also important as you work with your personal philosophy that you update it. You look to uncover biases that you may have, and then you want to see, how does that impact your belief system. I want to look at beliefs I may have about myself and about others, and these sometimes they're subconscious beliefs, and we want to do the work that's required to bring those unconscious beliefs to a conscious level, because many times those unconscious beliefs, those perspectives that we have that are kind of just we believe in them enough, but we don't access them. So they just kind of stay under our conscious level, and they still inform our decisions. And I had a case years ago where I had somebody who was somewhat close to me, and I realized as the process, as they were coming to end of life, that the relationship was very different, and we had some conversations, and I received insights. I could see how my relationship with that person and my perspective had colored many other relationships. And as soon as I had realized that and realized the impact of that, I literally felt this emotional knot untie in my psyche, and I had clarity on my past motives and beliefs and everything. It just became so crystal clear. It's very freeing, very liberating. But what was also amazing to me was the fact that with all the internal work that I've done through the years, there was that one little belief that was kind of skimming under the surface that I had not yet brought to conscious awareness. So you're developing, and once I did, it was very liberating, but you have to be able to be open with yourself and to always want to know what is going on inside of your brain, inside of your consciousness, and be able to bring that up and take a good look at it, a good honest look at it, and see, is this helping? How does this impact other parts of me? All of that becomes and informs your personal philosophy. And so the more that you are consciously aware of what the principles are that you live by and what your values are, and what your perspectives and your beliefs are when it comes to others, then the greater clarity and purpose you'll be able to find within life. So the philosophy, like I said, it's some of the key aspects. Let's look at it this way. That you want to look at are, what are my values? So I'm constructing a personal philosophy of life. What are my values? For me, health and vitality. Vitality means not just physical health, but mental, emotional, spiritual energy. And am I living authentically, which to me is also healthy. that becomes important. If I'm sick and I'm tired and I'm always run down, my attitude, I'm always going to have to struggle with an attitude, and we're not taking proper care. So for me, health and vitality becomes a prime value. Integrity. Well, the second one for me would be to a life of purpose, being able to help others, and that's why I find a tremendous amount of reward, whether I'm sharing things on here with Life and Living, the Qigong, the meditation, whether we're talking about self-improvement, where we're looking at the martial arts. My ability for me to be able to touch somebody and improve the quality of their lives is a high value for me. As I mentioned, integrity, industriousness, freedom are all other values. But you want to isolate, see what your values are. Write them down, look at them, and then take each one and see, am I fully expressing this? And what would it mean if I fully express this value? What does this value mean to me? And as I've just said, what would it mean to fully express this? There's times when I looked at my life and I go, I'm not, I say vitality is, of prime importance, but how's my sleep schedule? Am I focusing on my sleep? How is my diet? How's my exercise? All of that goes into play. Another key aspect is your beliefs, and this is a big one, and this is one that really forms your personal philosophy. So what do you believe about the world? What do you believe about yourself? And what do you believe about others? It's huge. What do you believe about groups of people who are different from you? And I'm not meaning just color-wise. What about a different philosophical outlook? What about another political ideology that's different from yours? Do you just say it's different, or do you think those people are evil? And why? And if those roles were reversed, how would you feel? So I think it's important. You need to really examine what your beliefs are. And you'll find your beliefs about the world strongly inform how you react and how you respond. So take the time, and it's a constant journey to reassess, to re-examine where your beliefs are. I do not believe now at almost 65 as I did at 35. Yes, there are some core parts of me that are very much the same because they're valid and they have been proven. And I believe it to be a skillful use. Excuse me. Talking. But what are your beliefs? What are your beliefs about yourself? Do you have a scarcity mentality? Do you have an abundance mentality? What do you believe about others? And remember, we all develop in stages, and we all develop according to different lines of development. Excuse me. Whether for some it's looking at emotional lines of development, but also that can be separated into how are my emotions when I look at family, how are our emotions and when I look at relationships with people who are close to me, people who are not close to me, to the in-laws. What's my emotional development? Where do I feel if I feel rejected, and what's my response? That will lead you into an awareness of what your personal lines of development are. Look at what you repress. Look at what you don't want to face as well as what you do want to face. What you don't want to face gets repressed because we don't really want to process the things that give us pain. But it's a vital part of our growth is to unlock and see those things that we did not want to face, and to look at that. And we begin to see, sometimes, yes, that was ugly. Sometimes we see it wasn't so bad. But either way, we need to process those emotions. We need to process the energy of those emotions. Another key aspect for your personal philosophy is what do you want to achieve in life? What are your goals? What's your purpose? All right? Your purpose also is born out of your philosophy. And what is it that you wish to achieve? And I would say initially there's not a right or wrong answer. I can go further and a little more nuanced, and obviously those things that hurt other people and keep them from expressing themselves in a natural way. Now, we're not talking things that are illegal, etc. Then those are things that you have to look at as well. Do you believe in, I just want to take, or do I want to give, or is there a balance of giving and taking? What are your habits? All right, your habits are going to tell you also about your current beliefs. You may think you believe one thing over here, but your habits are going to tell a different story. And you need to look at those, because at times you're going to find out you've got beliefs that are in conflict with your ideal. And we all have them from time to time. And so during those times, then what you want to be able to do is rectify and find a way to make those, your hindering beliefs, bring them into light, and be able to deal with them and change, so that you're getting rid of the beliefs that do not serve you, and really center in and incorporate the beliefs that do. I look at this as how can we live more skillfully. I don't necessarily look at it in terms of what's right or wrong. I think ethical and unethical kind of make themselves pretty clear, but even that based upon your personal philosophy. If I believe that everybody should be treated fairly, if somebody isn't treated fairly, then I may, I'm going to feel something about that I want to change. We also have to balance those emotional feelings with rational thinking as well, looking at yin and yang. It comes up, especially nowadays, we find, if you're only centered on the yin, the nurturing, the relationship, the empathic, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's needful, and in some ways, we need more of that. But if it's taken to an extreme, then we also forget that we also need the yang side. We need not just the feminine, but the masculine side. We need the discipline. We need to have external tasks. We need things to do. We need to have things that are a little more at times assertive, as well as those things that are more inviting. So you want to balance all those out. And all that begins to form your principles. How do I look at life? What are the rules that I see life operates by? And there's a couple ways of looking at this. One is what are the rules that I want life to adhere to? Okay? And then there's also, and I think this is a little deeper, is how does the universe operate? What do I see in the universe? How can I align with what I see? Let's look at, and I just use this as a personal part. I dealt with scarcity thinking a lot in my life. I was homeless for a few years and hitchhiked around the country. It was by choice. Had a tremendous time, but I also was uneducated. I was on my own at 16. I was uneducated. Been kicked out of school. It was a colorful youth. And so as I started getting in and turning my life around and working, I realized that I always had this feeling that I just wasn't worthy, that I was never going to earn much. And I had to really work with that. That was a picture of me that I had of myself. It was part of my belief system. And I had to uncover that. It was beginning to sabotage. I had to uncover that. And I had to begin to change that, and to see that when I really sat down and I looked at the universe, and I looked at the earth, and I go, look at the abundance that's in the universe. Look at the amount of variety of everything, trees, grasses, flowers. Obviously, we'll say God, the universe now, there's more than one kind of tree. There's more than one skin color. There's a whole variety. There's a huge abundance that exists in nature. Well, if nature has this abundance, and I'm part of that nature, well, then part of my life should also be looking at growth and expansion and abundance. And that drove home with me. So I said, okay, instead of me trying to say, here's how I want the world to be, how is the world? And let me align with it. And that was transformative. Now, I worked both sides of that. I did for a lot of years. I worked on goal setting, and I kept uncovering it. It was, things that were holding me back, and I was achieving, and I achieved a nice measure of success. I did not achieve as much contentment and success until I started to align with how I view how the universe was, and I aligned myself with those principles. Then I also achieved things easier, things began to flow, I began to attract more to myself, and I had a greater sense of contentment. And eventually, my desire to help other people led me to leave the workplace and focus on things like this. So all this is part of how and why you want to create this personal philosophy of yours, that how and why you want to be able to live your life according to your personal philosophy, and be aware when, one, you are not operating according to your personal philosophy, and then why, and then also check in with your philosophy. There was that, what's the old phrase, there's more in heaven and earth ratio than is encompassed in your personal philosophy. That's a paraphrase, actually. I think it was Shakespeare. But I always loved that. And because when I first heard that, I went, yeah, that's so true. We tend to stay very focused on our own little world and things that just affect us, and we don't really see how other people are. And in this, we want to see how the world is, and we want to expand our philosophy. And we have the center, that mean, the average, but you need to be able to look at the outliers and have a philosophy, have a belief system about them. How do we incorporate? How do we explain that? How does this happen? And I'm not going to tell you, how you should believe, but I think if you use all these elements, you will have a more conscious access to your personal philosophy and some understanding. So as you can see, it takes a lot of self-reflection. So take the time, journal. I personally find that writing things out for me was better than typing. Now my handwriting as such is very difficult to read afterwards, but the process gives me that objective look, and it slows my thinking down where I have to focus on what I'm writing and what I'm thinking. So write it down. Write down your philosophy. So I had 6 volumes of journals that deconstructed my personal philosophy and built it again. And as part of what I do in my journals is that at times I'm reconciling my viewpoint to my philosophy. I am expanding my philosophy. If I find that I didn't act as I thought I should, then I can change that in my philosophy. I can use it to monitor myself as well. Think about the influences. Think about the people, the experiences, the events that have shaped your perspective and your beliefs about them. And also look at what could be alternative beliefs about them. Sometimes we get locked in because we have already made a judgment about something that happened to us based upon our personal experiences in the past. So, and this is proper. This is, the human brain is designed to look at patterns. And it's how we process information. It becomes very efficient, and it's also effective. However, it can also lead to errors in judgment, errors in perspective, because our perspective is not broad enough, and we want to be able to check in and change those perspectives and make sure that they are still up to date and they encompass the broadest vision that we can. So, you want to look at the people that I run into and how they responded to me, how I responded to them. And it really is at times looking at the different avenues of different ways that response could have played out, and I begin to look at how my belief system is. And sometimes I have done this and I said, I reacted a little harshly then because I was dealing with some other things as well. But here's how I could have handled that better. So now I'm taking my principles and I'm just examining my life and I'm examining myself and I'm making those changes. And I realized that those patterns that I had applied to this situation, maybe they didn't need to apply. Maybe I filled in a blank incorrectly, and I shouldn't have, and I could have had a different perspective and it would change the outcome. All those become very important, okay? The biggest thing I think is also understanding the why, reasons behind your beliefs and your values. This is a tricky one because at first you deceive yourself, and this is why I believe this way about these people. This is why I believe that. But then when I say, okay, why do I believe that? Well, because somebody similar to them did this to me when I was younger. Or I see, and I saw somebody on the street and I saw how they behaved, and so I just kind of generalized it. And yes, is it prejudicial? Absolutely yes. There is a healthy part of prejudging, that it's just how we are wired. But we also have to be aware that we are not being prejudicial, that in a negative way that hurts ourselves and hurts others. And so look at the why. Understand, why do you believe the way that you do? And check in with that every so often, because the greater level of insight you have into your own psyche, it will come in stages. And many times we kind of continue, it's like a spiral, and we keep dealing with things, and whether we see that spiral going up or going down and deeper into our consciousness, those are just semantics. But oftentimes we end up dealing with different things in our life that are similar, and we think, I'm having to deal with this again, but you're doing it from a different perspective. Your perspective has changed, and now is your opportunity to delve further into those beliefs and those perspectives to see how they still line up. So this is why, just to kind of recap, a personal philosophy explains how you perceive the world. The more conscious you are of that, the greater clarity, peace, and contentment you're going to have in your life. The more you'll have opportunity to correct reactionary responses and engage in more responsible responses. It elevates your self-awareness, which is always important. And that's part of our journey in our evolution, is to become more and more aware. And then you find out what really is truth, and what's real is anything that can go away is ultimately not real. Only that which is eternally present is that which is real. And so there's an insight for a different time. So I hope this helps, and always feel free to reach out if you wish. But we thank you, and have a wonderful day.